Hi, I'm filmmaker Charlie Steeds, and I'm a writer, director, producer at my company Dark Temple Motion Pictures, and we make retro horror films. So how did I get into filmmaking? Um, well, as a teenager, I always made short movies, and then by the time I went to film school, by the time I was coming out of film school, I'd made 20 short films and decided, why not just try a feature film? Why not just try and see if I can take that same formula from the short movie shoots, move it over to features, and let's just see what comes out. And I managed to make a 60-minute long movie, which I then was able to get a sales and distribution company interested in, and they asked me to film an extra 20 minutes. I did, and then I realised sooner than I ever could have imagined that I was able to make films and get them out there on DVD. So from that point on, I then started making horror movies, which was always my passion, and that's always what I wanted to do. And I now have made, I think, 8 horror movies and do it as a full-time career. What was my first film project? Well, my very first feature film project was a very, very low budget film called Labyrinthia. It was released in the USA as Dead Man Apocalypse. And I learnt a lot from the experience, and especially the experience of seeing your film get distributed, because they changed the title and they gave it a very hideous front cover. So it was a real trial and error first film, but it sort of got me the connections I needed to then make what I wanted to make. And so I consider my first horror movie as my first movie, and that was a film called Escape from Cannibal Farm, which was also a very low budget movie, but my idea was to take the style of backwoods horror movies that I love, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Hills Have Eyes, and bring that into a British setting, because we don't really see much of that type of horror in Britain. So it's a long movie with lots of sort of characters and convoluted plot strands, which is what I like to do in horror. But it mixes the drama of the characters with gory exploitation style, Texas Chainsaw style violence and chainsaws. So that was basically, that's what I consider to be my first. That was, how long have I been doing it? That was probably, I think 4 years ago I shot the movie. So really in a very short space of time, I've got this formula with my company Dark Temple where we're basically making 2 movies a year. I'd say a movie takes me about 10 months to make, but every 6 months I'm taking on a new project. So I get a bit of an overlap with the post-production of the last film and the writing and funding of the new film. But that means that I'm constantly turning out more and more horror movies. So yeah, for about 4 years I've been seriously doing it as like a full-time thing. What have you worked on or currently worked on? Well, currently I'm in post-production on my newest film, which is called A Werewolf in England, and it's a Victorian-era werewolf film. Very, very... well, it's a horror comedy, but it's also very gory and full of action and full of werewolves. I was asked by the company if I could make a werewolf movie, and I gave them a few suggestions. One of them was for it to be set in the Victorian period and to be very gothic and over the top, and that's what they went with. And I think werewolves, it's difficult to take werewolves seriously. You know, to me, they're a bit more of a funny creature, big and hairy, and I felt that comedy would go well with it, and obviously also action, because they've got big teeth and big claws and they're going to be fighting with people. So that's basically what the film is. It starts off almost like a sort of murder mystery slasher movie set inside this Victorian house, and then there's a sort of twist halfway through where we realise that the killers are only killing in order to feed the werewolves. And then it's all out carnage and just stupidity. There's werewolf with an eye patch, there's a werewolf in a dress. But yeah, it should be good fun. So that's what I'm currently editing. But in the past, I've already mentioned my first film, Escape from Cannibal Farm. I then made a gothic horror film called The House of Violent Desire, which we shot in France in a castle. And then I shot a film called The Barge People, which is fish mutants fighting with people on the canal. Then I made a film called Winterskin, which is all set out in the snow in a log cabin and is a very contained, misery-like thriller that gets sort of very violent and has some sort of Western themes with shootouts and all of that sort of thing. Then I made a haunted house movie called An English Haunting, which all of these are out now. And then after that, I made a film called Vampire Virus, which is a quite camp, romantic vampire movie, which is out, I think, later this year. And a film called Death Ranch, which is a blaxploitation grindhouse-inspired movie that I filmed out in Tennessee. Very gory and splattery revenge movie, which hopefully is out later this year or even next year. What advice would you give to people wanting to get into the film industry? Really, my only advice is just get out there and make the movie. Like, there's no other advice that's better than that, really, and no one can really advise you on how you're going to make your own movie. You basically, what I would say is just take anything and everything you have, and whatever it is, just make the movie with it and just see what happens. You know, you can't sit around expecting your debut film to be spectacular, no matter how much you think you know about filmmaking or how much you love films. You know, I'd made 20 short films, and then when it came time to make Labyrinthia, I really didn't have very much. And I ended up shooting the whole film in these little wooden tunnels that I built in a little cow shed. You know, and you look back on that and you think, Jesus, what was I thinking? You know, it's just ridiculous to even think that you could build a film around that. And you look at the film and, you know, it's very low budget, and it's probably mocked for being as low budget as it is, set in these silly little tunnels. But it's all I had at the time, and it's got me started in making what I want to make. And now, 8 movies down the line, you know, you're still learning just as much as you were on the first movie, and there's still all the same limitations. Even though the budgets are way bigger and distribution is a lot easier, you still have the same challenges. So whatever you've got, don't let anyone tell you it's not enough, or the budget isn't high enough, or you can't do it on that camera. You know, if the camera shoots video and you can record sound, tell the movie, make the script as good as it can possibly be, and try and get it out there. That's my advice. Just do it. If you want to follow me, you can find me at Dark Temple Films on Twitter and on Facebook. And you can go onto my website, www.darktemple.co.uk, and keep up to date with all my latest filmmaking exploits and adventures. And then just go onto Amazon and just try and find my movies on DVD and on Prime, and yeah, just have a watch.